So we've been making our videos talking about the 2024 prospects and what they have to say about the Montreal Canadiens. Okay, I say prospects, plural. We've only really done that with one prospect, but we did talk about it multiple times. Yeah, we made a few videos talking about what Caden Lindstrom had to say about the Montreal Canadiens and their situation. Seems like, from what we're reading, it seems like he'd very much like to be a part of the Montreal Canadiens organization, but aside from Lindstrom, there are other guys that Habs fans would like to see the team draft who have also made some comments. And today what I wanted to do is go over some by one of the other main candidates that seems to be popping up and around the Montreal world. Let's talk today about projected, okay, I was going to say top 5 pick, but is it guaranteed? I don't really know. It depends on who you ask, I guess. Projected first round pick, let's just say that. Tij Iginla, son of Jarome Iginla, and a very coveted Calgary Flames target as well. Because when it comes to what Tij Iginla recently spoke out about with the Canadiens at the Combine, I thought it was very interesting. Let's go out there and read this article on TVA Sports because it goes over how the Montreal Canadiens had themselves a dinner with Tij Iginla too. And I say two because it's already been reported that the Montreal Canadiens had dinner with Caden Lindstrom, the guy that we had talked about earlier, whose comments about the Canadiens seem to make him a fan favorite amongst this fan base already. He isn't even drafted yet, but Canadiens fans already really like him. Tij Iginla, you could say, already has some of that love, partly because he is the son of Jarome Iginla, and also because he's a very talented prospect. Until now, though, we haven't really heard his thoughts about things, so let's turn the floor over to this article. Caden Lindstrom is not the only forward who was invited to a dinner by the Montreal Canadiens as part of the draft combine in Buffalo. Jarome Iginla's son Tij told our journalist Anthony Martineau that he was also entitled to a dinner. Iginla is one of the possibilities for the Habs, yada yada yada. This is what he said in a tweet made by Anthony Martineau. Tij Iginla dit pouvoir jouer à toutes les positions, mais préférer évoluer. Okay, we're not going to say that. Tij Iginla says he can play all positions, but his preference is to stay at center. Slafkovsky and Caufield would be his preferred wingers if selected by the Habs. Now, okay, this is pretty interesting. We did have similar comments made by Caden Lindstrom, but he was more so praising the heck out of the Canadiens and their guys. He had spoke about how great it was that Slafkovsky played and everything, how good those guys are, and now we're seeing Tij Iginla pretty much say similar things, but it's not really to the same extent. Now, I'll give Iginla the pass here. Maybe he did have some more stuff to say. Martineau might not have just tweeted it out, but with this in mind, if Tij Iginla is a Montreal Canadien, and his main idea, his mind's eye, goes to the idea of him playing with Slafkovsky and Caufield, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments as to what that does to the rest of the lineup. Of course, it moves everybody down a spot at center, but what are your thoughts on Nick Suzuki becoming a second-line guy and not being the top-line captain like we have seen him being the past few years? I will say that when it comes to ceiling, I don't know if I would necessarily believe thoroughly that Iginla has a higher ceiling than Suzuki. Suzuki's already so good, and he is still only 24, 25 years old, so he can get better. But if Tij Iginla is in a spot where he wants to eventually dethrone Nick, he's gonna have to prove it. And for Nick Suzuki, you have to be confident in building a team around the second and third line so that if you have the chance to send another center down to line 2, he's still playing with quality players. Doc, Newhook, these guys are great. Joshua is great, but you could always get better. So the idea that Tij Iginla is saying straight up, yeah, he wants to play with Slafkovsky and Caufield, and by proxy, dethrone Nick Suzuki, that was super interesting to me, and I wanted to let me know your thoughts in the comments as to whether or not that's possible. Now, if you wanted to talk about play style, this is where things get really interesting, because Nick Suzuki, he plays a game that I think is really translatable to anybody. No matter who he plays with, Suzuki is one of the smartest players in the NHL, pretty much, at being able to just do the right thing. He adjusts very well, his presence of mind, he always knows what's going on, he makes the proper decisions. He's not the fastest, he's not the absolute craziest shooter, but he does have a great shot, and he's got okay mobility. So, he's a very versatile option. The thing is, when it comes to Tij Iginla, he has just a work ethic that is unmatched by so many in this NHL draft, and he's got just that dog in him. Like, that is the best way to describe Tij Iginla, especially when you watch the way that he's able to traverse the offensive zone when he is the only guy in the zone, when the opposite team has the puck, when Tij Iginla's a hound, going out there and just causing a ruckus for the opposite team, stealing the puck, driving to the front of the net, and then just burying a beautiful goal. Like, he is a gamer. And when it comes to his projectability, I mean, if you have a first-line guy doing that night in, night out, that's a really, really strong forecheck. And maybe it could be one of those things where he's able to dig pucks free, get the pucks out in front for Caufield or Slafkovsky, and then some magic happens after that. There's a really good amount of potential here with this idea. But of course, we recognize that Suzuki and Caufield, they've worked together for a few years now. It's been really good. And you have Slafkovsky, who has looked very good in that spot as well, especially in the second half of the previous season. So, do you want to break that up? Is that something that you would think about? If it's Tij Iginla who is coming in and acting as the disturbance, is that an okay bet to make? I mean, it's kind of common consensus now that Tij Iginla's ceiling is that of potentially a first-line guy. So if he is able to do that, then what are your thoughts on him translating to the #1 center spot? And quite frankly, how do you think Suzuki could play with Doc and Newhook and whomever else it's going to be on the second line? As I had said, I think that Suzuki plays a versatile enough game that no matter who he plays with, he'll be effective. But there's a difference in Suzuki getting assists just throwing the puck over to Caufield for him to bury it, versus him setting up plays for Doc and Newhook. There would need to be some adjustment, but I'm confident that Nick Suzuki is smart enough to figure that out and get things going properly. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire thing, how the Canadiens have taken, firstly, Caden Lindstrom out to dinner, who had already spoken out about Slafkovsky and Caufield and those guys in the talent profile of the Canadiens, but how they're also taking out Tij Iginla. And there were some reports saying that they didn't take out certain other guys. I think Beckett Sinecki's name popped up in there, that the Canadiens didn't take him out to dinner. Of course, things can change in a phone call, so we'll see if everything wraps itself out over the next few hours and days here, but it's shaping up to look like the Canadiens have their guys. But of course, I will say, dinners, dates, these guys are not guaranteed to be in Canadiens just because the Habs take them out to dinner. We had learned that in 2022 when Slafkovsky was not taken out to dinner by the Canadiens, but they inevitably chose him first overall anyway. So, dinners, schminners, you can put some value on that if you want, but it is something that did happen, and it was reported about, so I did want to make a video about this. What are your thoughts about the idea of drafting Tij Iginla in the 5th overall spot? And if he does get selected by Montreal, do you think he has what it takes to overthrow Nick Suzuki in the first-line spot, and do you think it's going to happen? If not Iginla, who else would you want to see the Montreal Canadiens draft? What are your thoughts on Beckett Sinecki, Caden Lindstrom, Ivan Demidov, Berkly, Catton? I feel like his name has started to fade away a little bit. Canadiens fans are a lot more obsessed with Lindstrom and Iginla nowadays, it seems. Or do you trade away a guy like Gooley and draft Sam Dickinson? We had made a video about that earlier today, where you trade away one of these guys for a Trevor Zegras because that's what the Ducks are asking for. But either way, thoughts in the comment section below about the Canadiens and these draft conversations. I hope you enjoyed this JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY, and bye.